I was at the gym on Friday night working out in my usual spot, and there was a person beside me working out as he typically did. We're in a class together, distanced. And I have always noticed that he had a tattoo on his calf. So at the end of the class, as usual, he kind of came over and struck up a conversation. And I finally got up the nerve to say, "Tell me about that tattoo." "Oh, thanks for asking," he said. He said, "This just happens to be a visual interpretation of prime numbers." Of tattoo imagery, I would imagine that is not common. I was like, "Well, tell me about that." So we went on, and he went on to tell me that he was a math teacher. "Ugh, math," I said. Not my strongest subject, ever. But there was always something about math that I did remember. And that has to do with, I don't know if you remember these different properties. And one of them is the transitive property, which says that if A equals B and B equals C, then A has to equal C. The transitive property. Now, if you are in elementary or high school, please close your ears right now, because I have never, ever, 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 ever applied that in life. Never once, until I went to seminary and started reading the Gospel of John. That's when it began to make sense for me. Because that is what the Gospel of John is about. It's about showing that Jesus is equal to God. The Gospel of John, John's Jesus, is all about reflecting God. The things that Jesus does on earth are of God, from God. They are God. So John's Jesus is always saying, if you see these things happen in me, then you're seeing God. And if you're connecting to me, and I connect directly to God, then you are connecting to God. It's amazing. And that's what this Jesus is all about, showing us God, and Jesus being literally that connective tissue. And it happens today in our gospel. In the gospel that we hear today, we are in the 18th chapter of John. And this is a part of John's gospel that you might be familiar with, because we hear it usually on Good Friday. It's the trial scene. It's the interrogation scene. Pilate and Jesus are having a chat. Pilate is talking to Jesus. And if we remember that transitive property, what does that mean? It means that Pilate is talking to God. So what we hear today is just a snippet of that larger scene that's usually reserved for Good Friday. Next week, we begin the season of Advent, and it is the first Sunday of a new year for us here in the church. That means that today is the last Sunday of the church year. And sometimes the end is just as important as the beginning. So what are Jesus and Pilate chatting about on this last Sunday of the year? They're talking about the power of truth. In the very next sentence, after what Gwen read today, the very next sentence, Pilate asks, "What is truth?" And that's what we're going to spend our time focusing on in this particular moment. Earlier, though, in the Gospel of John, Jesus has already staked his claim on truth. If you remember, Jesus said, I am the way and the life. Good for you. And Jesus continues today. I came to testify to the truth, Jesus says. I came to testify to the truth. And as we've said before, if Jesus is really reflective of God, and if Jesus is talking about truth, then God must be about truth. What does it mean to belong to the truth, St. Paul's? We're hearing a lot about truth in our culture today, and it's amazing. What is truth? What is not truth? What truths are being disclosed? What truths are being covered up? Is there ever any good in holding back the truth? Well, the gospel that I read is all about truth-telling. And the Jesus that I have come to know is a Jesus that is interested in the truths of our lives and the truths of our society and the truths of our churches and the truths of our world. There's one story I remember about Jesus saying that what is bound will stay bound and what is loosed will stay loosed. There's another story in which he says that nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and that which is secret will become known. And to put it into one of our familiar hymns, hide it under a bushel? No. I'm going to let it shine. So when Jesus came into the world as a tiny little baby, a story that we're going to hear a lot more about in the next 4 weeks, when he came as that vulnerable, tiny, unvaccinated, uninsured baby, Jesus was already telling the truth. The truth about life and the truth about those with whom he would surround himself. And then Jesus grew up and he went to that mountain and preached that famous sermon. You remember the one, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are hungry and thirsty. Blessed are those who are brave enough to fight for peace and to imagine peace. Blessed are those who live into the truths of who they are. And as Jesus walked along healing and blessing and rebuking and feeding, he was simply pointing out truths. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. Truths, and he put them right in front of power. Yes, Jesus is a truth teller, not because of a decision that he made when he grew up and took an ethics class or thought about applying to law school. Jesus is a truth teller because God is a God of truth. Jesus can't help it. And Jesus is a truth teller because he knows that nothing that is done in truth will be wasted. And Jesus is a truth teller because he knows that God can do amazing things with our most profound truths. Now, don't get me wrong. Truth-telling is hard. It can be painful. There will be those who do not want to hear it. And there will even be those who react violently because certain truths are being named and spoken into existence. So you may keep that in mind as you gather with friends and family around the Thanksgiving table on Thursday. The truth is often hard to speak and hard to hear. But if Jesus is truth, as he has said, then it must mean that truth and life go hand in hand. Truth and life go hand in hand. And if Jesus is truth, then God must also have some pretty firm ideas about what the truth can do and bring about. I remember a phrase, the truth can do what? Set you free. I know this in my own life. I have had truths I did not want to name, but a certain trust in Jesus told me to name them. It was and it remains hard in some ways, but the freedom is far stronger than the shackles. And friends, as I look out into our world today, I am amazed at how we are speaking the truth so much differently. I'm also amazed at how certain truths are simply ignored. Are there places where the truth is bringing healing to deep wounds? I believe there are. Are there places in the world where the truth is being covered by a dark blanket and not allowed to heal? I believe there are. So I repeat my earlier question, what does it mean to belong to the truth? St. Paul's. At St. Paul's, here, we walk with the firm belief that the truth is redeeming. The truth, when named, is transformational, we believe. The truth, when named, we believe, is an opportunity for resurrection, a new source of life. And today you and I come together on this last Sunday of our church year, and we call it Christ the King Sunday. And on this Sunday we proclaim Jesus as the Lord of Lords, and the church has called it Christ the King Sunday to put a period at the end of the year and proclaim Jesus as the ruler of all creation. But I also know that that language of king may not resonate for some of us. And I can't go back and change all that, but I would like to invite us all to imagine, what would it be for you? Christ the what Sunday? For me, if I use my imagination, it's Christ the Truth Teller Sunday. Doesn't have the same ring, perhaps, but it does ring truer to the Jesus that I want to follow. So here we are, St. Paul's. We're trying to tell the truth. And more importantly, we as a church and as a congregation are working to embody truth. And it's not easy, and in some ways, it has cost us. But there is no place in which our belief in the resurrection is more apparent than when we are brave enough to tell the truth. Let me repeat that. There is no place in which our belief in the resurrection is more apparent than when we are brave enough to tell the truth. Because in doing so, we put our trust in a God who brings life out of the difficulties of truth telling. The tomb is a container for lies. But Jesus left the lies behind when he got up on that morning and walked into the sunshine, bringing every truth with him. And from that moment, when he was born a vulnerable baby, to the day he walked out an adult, broken, beaten, and pierced, Jesus let truth loose in the world. What does it mean to belong to the truth? Is my truth your truth? Is your truth my truth? Is our truth somebody else's truth? The truth is not always obvious. But I tell you what is obvious. That person named Jesus. Which is why we come here Sunday after Sunday, year after year, to get a clearer idea about what Jesus, the truth teller, is calling us to be and become. So whether or not you're good at math, whether or not numbers add up for you, we're all here to be truth tellers, and maybe a little bit of math can help. 7 days of creation that God called good. 12 disciples that bumbled their way into the history books. 100 sheep, one got lost, and that one was just as important as the 99. 5 loaves, 2 fish got multiplied somehow into enough to feed 5,000. And on the 3rd day, and then there's that final transitive mystery. God, the creator of the universe, you and me, connected forever through the sacrificial life of Jesus. It just doesn't add up. And no calculator will ever be able to add it up, because God's love for you is incalculable. But it is true. And if you were to hand me a Bible right now, I would put my hand on it, and I would swear that it is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.